Hey guys, today I'm talking about stage 1 recovery of narcissistic victim syndrome. Now, stage 1 kind of sounds like a cancer, right? It sounds like an illness. Well, narcissistic victim syndrome is not an illness. It's not in the DSM. It's not something you can get diagnosed with. However, it sure feels like you're ill, because you certainly don't feel like yourself. But that term alone might describe why you're suffering without really helping you to have tools. If that's your case, then make sure you look up complex PTSD. Okay, so narcissistic victim syndrome, stage 1 recovery. I remember one psychologist that I was speaking to, we were talking about narcissistic abuse, and we were talking about how almost taboo it is sometimes for therapists to diagnose someone as having narcissistic personality disorder, or for being able to identify if somebody that they're working with is being narcissistically abused. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, you know, in my case, he said, I can easily tell if somebody has been in a relationship with somebody that is high on the scale of narcissistic personality disorder. And I asked him how, you know, since that seems to be something that no therapist wants to do. And he said that narcissistic abuse leaves an imprint on the individuals in the family. It leaves a distinct imprint, very much like an animal leaves a track in the ground where it's walking. And a trained animal tracker does not have to see the animal to know that paw print is a bear or a mountain lion. Their expertise easily allows them to identify what animal was there based on the print that it leaves in the soil. Well, he said, I kind of feel that way with narcissistic abuse. The print or the imprint that it leaves on its victims is so clear and so similar that it's very easy to spot. Now, I was grateful to have found somebody like that, because the reality is I've spoken to so many of my clients that told me that they were in therapy for years, some over a decade, and not once was the phrase narcissistic abuse mentioned or NPD mentioned. Now, something else that I found helpful in the beginning stages of my working through narcissistic victim syndrome as well as complex PTSD was listening to how other people that have been through it describe it. Okay, because I'm going to be honest, I remember going through the DSM thinking, okay, these certain individuals that I know they have a personality disorder, but I didn't know what it was. So I was looking through all these, you know, diagnosable personality disorders, and sometimes I would hit on something that resonated, maybe borderline personality, a few others that kind of resonated, but there was always too much that was off. Until I remember reading a letter that somebody sent in. It was a letter by a woman describing her relationship with somebody close to her in her life. And as I'm reading this letter, right, it didn't have the criteria of the DSM. It didn't say somebody that's entitled. It didn't have all the technicalities of NPD. It was literally just her feelings. This is what happens when I'm with this person. This is how I feel. This is what a conversation with them feels like. This is what happens at this time. And as I'm reading this letter, I'm thinking, did I send this in? It was so on point with my life that it just hit home. And in the end, the last sentence was, this particular family member was recently diagnosed with NPD. And that's what hit home to me, that the NPD is so much more than the criteria listed in the DSM. The DSM doesn't really describe what happens to you as a result of being with somebody with that criteria. And I think that's where these videos are so helpful, because they come from a point of view of looking at it as what it is, right? But what it does to you, the family member of somebody that has this particular disorder. So with that in mind, again, I'm kind of getting off topic, but I want to really focus on what it looks like when you first start recovering. And I would say the first steps in recovering is recognizing and acknowledging that there's something, very wrong, and not just wrong, but pathological that's going on in the relationship. Most people that are in relationships with somebody that's a narcissist, and when I say in a relationship, I'm not just talking about a significant other. I'm talking about, obviously, intimate relationships, but also family relationships between, it could be siblings, between cousins, between parents and child, grandparents and grandchildren, and it could also be people at work. Okay, so just remember that if I say relationship, I'm generalizing that it could be any of those relationships. So most often when you're in a relationship with somebody that's like that, you don't really understand that there is psychological and emotional abuse taking place, especially if you're dealing with somebody that's very covert, okay? And I think it's a hard truth pill to swallow when you start realizing that you are being abused, right? Because sometimes it's been going on for years, for decades, for your whole life, if it's a close family member, and you don't even realize that you're being abused. So the first step is acknowledging that. It's breaking out of the denial. It's breaking out of the hamster wheel of, I'm going to try harder and harder to please this person or to make the relationship work, as if all the responsibility is on you. You step out of that hamster wheel and you're actually now viewing the relationship objectively and looking at who's putting what into the relationship, as well as how it's affecting you. At this point, there's like this hunger for truth and reality, right? So people that are just learning about narcissistic abuse, it's almost like you go through a period where you are obsessed with learning about the narcissist. And that's understandable. No one should skip that phase, okay? We don't want to get stuck in that phase, but we definitely can't skip that phase, because throughout the years of being in that relationship, your gut instinct knew something was off. Nothing made sense. And this is why it causes complex PTSD, right? Because when your brain can't make sense out of it, and there's constant stress, and there's constant underlying anxiety, emotional and psychological abuse, it affects your nervous system and it affects your brain as well. Okay, so when you go online and you actually start learning, there are terms for the very things that you've been experiencing your whole life. Terms like the double bind, terms like triangulation, projection, gaslighting, all of these things that you have been experiencing, but you didn't have the words for it. So without the emotional literacy part, it's really hard for our brain to work through something if it doesn't understand it. So there's this hunger to have that validated over and over again, because your reality was always denied. Maybe you didn't know what gaslighting was, but you could tell the person was trying to make you feel crazy. So when you would say that to the person, they would spin it again, they would gaslight you more until you didn't even know what you were arguing about by the end of that conversation. So here you have the terminology, and it's almost like your soul just craves listening to it again and again, just to have that confirmation that your reality is reality. So there's the knowledge part, there's the learning part of the beginning stages of working through narcissistic victim syndrome. And then there's the unmeshing, okay? So you start to realize how you are playing into the game, right? Because narcissists are always playing this game. The game is all about narcissistic supply, right? And how much they can get, and how often they can get it, and how they can extract it when you least expect it. And without realizing it, you were always getting sucked into it. Now, some of the ways that you were getting sucked into it was by over-explaining. Actually thinking that if you got the words just right, they would this time understand and get where you're coming from and realize what you're doing or what you're feeling. right? Another way that you get sucked into it is by reacting. So they purposely caused you to get angry over things that didn't make sense. So when you would react and they would calm down because now they were emotionally regulated, you played into their game. You did exactly what they wanted you to do. When you defend yourself as if you need them to agree with you for you to hold on to your reality, you're getting sucked into their game. When you stop being you to try to make sure that they don't get angry, what you're really doing is you are changing you, you're altering you, denying and divorcing pieces of you to try to keep them happy. That's exactly what they want from you, because that makes them feel all the more powerful, that you're willing to give up your authenticity and free will for them. Now, obviously, when you're engaging in these behaviors, you don't realize it. A lot of it is being done under your conscious awareness, right? It's a lot that's going on a subconscious level. So be compassionate with yourself when you start to really look at it, because when you do, it's painful, okay? So along with that, it's about extracting or separating you from them. And what that means is you start putting into practice mindsets like the observe, don't absorb. Instead of trying to stop them from being angry, you let go of trying to control them and you stay true to you, right? You observe their anger. Oh, that's so-and-so being angry. What am I feeling? Well, I'm having a great day. Other than seeing them upset, I'm happy. I'm gonna stay me. You start being you again, which means the things you divorced because they made that person angry. And by the way, when I say the things you divorced, right, I'm not talking about vices or bad habits or things that are bad for you or for the relationship. I'm talking about little simple things that make you happy, like reading a book or taking a walk or exercising or eating healthy or putting makeup on. Little things that are just part of your personality that you wind up stopping because it makes them upset. You start allowing them to have their energy and you stay in your energy. So for example, a lot of people that come to me for coaching, they'll tell me things like, I can't even enjoy a cup of coffee. And when I ask them, well, why can't you enjoy the cup of coffee? They'll often say it's because of the look that the narcissist gives them, or the comment that the narcissist says to them, like, oh, wow, you're sitting there drinking coffee. Shouldn't you be doing something else? In other words, the other person is jabbing so that you lose your happiness. But what they forgot was that it's a choice. Do I want to allow this person to put me in that mood, or do I want to stay happy? And you start staying in your energy again by practicing the observe, don't absorb. You're like, there, he or she is being nasty. That's their choice. I don't like that they're being nasty, but I'm allowed to enjoy my coffee. And I'm reading this book and I'm happy. And I'm allowed to be happy. At this stage, you stop hiding. You stop hiding you. Because isn't that true that with narcissistic abuse, you wind up hiding things because the other person's always mad. Unless you're doing something for them, they get mad. If it's just for you, or if it's just for another member of the family, or for somebody at work, they will get mad at you. Well, you start allowing them to be them, and you start living as you. Okay, so because you're doing that, it's almost like good things and bad things start to happen. The positive thing that starts to happen is that you start feeling like you again. Because guess what? When you were in that game and you were doing all of those behaviors to try to appease the other person, you were not being you. So you start to feel connected to self again. You start to feel empowered. You start to feel more grounded in yourself and less reactive. So that's the positive, but I will warn you that the negative that goes along with that is that the family members or the coworkers or the neighbors, whatever the relationship is, they won't like it. And I think it takes a while to really swallow the pill that they don't want you to be happy, that they don't want you to feel empowered. It's hard to believe, especially if it's an intimate relationship or a family member. It's hard to believe that they don't want that, because why? Why wouldn't somebody want that for someone that they love, right? And it's because the way things are, as tumultuous as they are, that's exactly what works for the narcissist. The push and pull, the ups and downs, the roller coaster, the provocations, the projection, the getting you angry so that they feel better, all of that, that's the perfect relationship for them. They are looking for a peaceful relationship, because in order to have a peaceful relationship, they would have to show up in healthy ways. They would have to actually look at themselves and be willing to self-reflect and change any unhealthy behaviors. They don't want to do that. So when you start changing and getting healthier, the negative that comes out of that is the fact that they don't like it. So one of two things will happen. Okay, either the person that's getting healthier and stronger realizes just how sick this person is and how unwilling they are to do their part, right, to get help, and they separate because they need to keep themselves safe. That's one thing that can happen. But sometimes the person that's getting healthy doesn't want the relationship to end for whatever reason, right? And this could be with family members too, remember. But the narcissist cannot handle you knowing who they really are. They can't handle seeing how empowered you are in you, because then they can't dump themselves into you. That means they're forced to see themselves, and that is a horrible thing for them. They need to dump and project all their negative into someone else so that they can feel better about themselves. And as you get more empowered, they can't do that. And so I think some people don't realize, they don't understand why the person then discards them. Okay, they think it's something they did wrong. They think that it's somehow their fault, when it's really not. It's understandable why you could think that, because it doesn't make sense. Again, as you're getting stronger, you're being healthier, you would think that it would have a positive influence in the relationship. And when it doesn't, it can be really confusing. But this is the beginning stage of healing, okay? So just summing it up real quick, it's about breaking out of the fog, right? And seeing exactly what's going on, acknowledging the pathology that's been going on both sides, right? Because the narcissist is creating the game, but we also have to look at where we're getting sucked in and we're playing the game, even though we don't realize it, even if it's something you don't really want to do. So that's part of the recovery stage, is starting to sever those behaviors that keep getting you sucked in. It's also about staying in your own energy, which means that you start learning what emotional boundaries look like and feel like. And it's about starting to live as you again, getting in touch with the pieces of yourself that you lost throughout the relationship. So that's the first stage, and it usually ends in a discard, okay, with one or the other discarding. That doesn't mean that now everything becomes amazing and life gets awesome. Now it will get awesome, but you first have to go through the second stage of recovery. So if you're interested in my posting a video about that, let me know in the comment section below. And also remember that at the end of this month, I have a live workshop. It's about recovering. I'm going to talk about the first stages after narcissistic abuse. So if you want to go in depth and you want to be a part of a live interactive workshop, make sure you check out the link. I will leave it here for you.